Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 4 of Motorlat's News Roundup. I'm Beatrice Zamuner, Chief Editor of the English section of Motorlat, and I will be joined by David Coath very shortly to discuss this week's relevant news. I'm just waiting for him. I already see we are 5. Hello everyone from all over the world. Tell us where you're from. We always read the comments and feel free to interact with us during the lives. So still a few seconds before David can connect with us. Oh, I see we are quite a few today. Very good. I really hope everyone enjoys our hi from Mexico, hello from Italy here. Yes, we have a few people writing to us from Italy as well. Hi, Andre. As I was saying, I really hope you enjoy our news roundup. We always try to provide you with the best content and obviously with the most relevant news. I see David, just trying to connect with him. I think we are about to connect. Hi, David.
How are you doing, B?
I'm doing just fine. If you can just lift the camera a bit more because I can see your nose. I can see your mouth, but no eyes. So no, the other way. Okay, yeah, just fine. It's fine. Okay, leave it this way and it will be perfect.
The signal is an interesting one this evening, so we shall see how long we last. So let's get right to it.
Ooh,
McLaren,
I
what's
really hope everything will be glitches free as it was last week. So how are you doing? I really hope you're doing fine.
Reed and Jensen,
Oh,
or
very
or
nice.
Nods Nedge Notub, as it looks like on camera.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone, it's backwards, everyone. But yeah, we can recognize his face. So I think that everyone will guess who the author of the book is. I do have it too as well at home. So I think there's a problem with the audio. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you
Okay,
fine. I
perfect.
wasn't saying anything. I was
Okay,
listening. I was listening.
I saw you. I saw you moving your mouth. So today, on this day, it marks 1 year after Sebastian Vettel claimed his victory at the Canadian Grand Prix that iconic way by swapping the first and the second post after being inflicted a penalty. What do you remember from that day, and what were you doing?
I remember his superb qualifying, his dominance that it looked like he was going to have over the race weekend, and then obviously the stewards' involvement, the decision, and the superb placard removal of the 1 and the 2. And for many people, that was the beginning of the downward spiral before Singapore when he got back on track.
Yeah, I do agree. It was part of the downward spiral, but still, I think that his downward spiral was actually something that happened earlier, because I think that the downward spiral was all about 2018 from Hockenheim around that date. I still think that was a long time coming, as he was, not, his mind was not just clear. So it was something that had been building up since the previous year, not just 2019.
Yeah, for me, that day was quite heartbreaking because the reaction of the main grandstand that was so jubilant at seeing Sebastian put it into the hoardings, and this was a German racer at his home race, and that reaction always lasted with me. Yes, of course, Petronas, Mercedes, all of that, but this was a German racer in Germany, and the crowd cheered when it happened. I couldn't get over that.
No, me neither. Also because it was probably one of his best chances to claim the title, to do a very consistent season with a competitive car. So that was even more heartbreaking to witness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know that Rob Smedley said that Vettel's best racing was last season, but in 2018, what he did with that Ferrari, it just was so sad to see.
Absolutely, it was too much to handle. It was so painful to see. Also because a four-time champion who had built such a great reputation was going that way, and I think it was all about the future, the uncertainty. Who is his teammate going to be in the future? I think he was not able to handle the pressure, and it culminated this year when actually it was decided that he was no longer continuing with Ferrari. So it was something that had been building up for a long time, and Canada was just a small part of what he had endured during the past 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Kimi was a fantastic rear gunner for him. They had a wonderful relationship, and he was a big loss to Vettel's position in the team, to the support that he felt. We've heard lots of the team radio from Vettel's first win with his Italian and Grazie and Ferrari, and then we just didn't hear that even in Singapore with the victory in Singapore because that was slighted as well from Leclerc, who was it Charles's, was it Seb's? And it just always had it didn't have that special magic, which is a shame because I love Sebastian Vettel and I love seeing him happy. And if happiness will be him not racing in Formula One and that's what he ends up doing, so be it. I just want a happy Sebastian Vettel. He deserves it.
Do you envision Vettel racing in other categories like IndyCar or the endurance?
So IndyCar is a very interesting one. So we had the reports recently from Rosenqvist and Ericsson, obviously Swedish racers doing extremely well, and they came out and said that IndyCar is bigger than than Formula One in Sweden. So they want to have European races of IndyCar. We obviously know with Penske and the negotiations possibly going on with Ferrari, is there an avenue there? But if you're Sebastian, don't you want to just cut ties completely? So would he go under the Ferrari umbrella, or has it left a bitter taste in his mouth? There's a lot of unknowns there, but we know he loves racing history, and I'd love to see him in Le Mans.
Oh, you would love to see him in Le Mans. Very interesting choice. I would practically see him do well in IndyCar just because we have seen that negotiation between Ferrari and Roger Penske are at a very, not an advanced state. So I think that there is a huge platform there for Ferrari to potentially join the sport and grow. And that will be a great opportunity for Vettel to rebuild his career completely. So this is why I would rather see him in a new kind of environment, not as challenging as the WEC, but still something that has that Formula spirit as an IndyCar, but with a new manufacturer, because it would obviously be a very tough challenge for Ferrari joining Honda and Chevrolet.
Yeah, it's really nice to see that Scuderia Ferrari are looking for this option because we know about furloughing staff with McLaren. We know about the budget cap, so the teams are being reduced. And for them to not be looking at just, getting rid of so many employers, they're thinking, okay, let's channel our energy, let's channel our talent elsewhere. Yeah, I don't think Vettel will be part of that talent that keeps on being channeled with them. And that is a loss, definitely.
No, absolutely. But what was interesting to see through this news is that basically in 2022, IndyCar is going to undergo a very big overhaul concerning the rules, just like Formula One. But unlike Formula One, they are encouraging new manufacturers to join, which is kind of the opposite of the tendency that Formula One is currently witnessing. So how do you see that, opposite phenomenon taking
Well, we
shape
wrote today
in the two categories?
I wrote on Motorlat today about Red Bull Advanced Technologies and the work with the aero screen, the negotiations they're doing for the fourth launching of the chassis, the next generation, the fourth generation of IndyCar. So it's a prime time because we know McLaren Shadow are wanting to get into IndyCar properly. Ferrari are talking about it. This could be the moment where if they balance things right, it could be the ascendancy of IndyCar. But what they don't need is Simon Pagenaud giving them bad public relations by doing things like taking out Lando Norris. We could do with a bit less of that.
Yeah, definitely. Also, with what happened with Santino Ferrucci as well, we have to keep an eye on the behavior of the drivers because that's obviously something teams are sensitive to. Also because of their image, also because the sponsors and how they care about their image. So it is something that has to be well put together from all departments of a team, and the drivers obviously have to play their part.
I mean, we've spoken before about Formula E and Daniel Abt, of course, with the scandal with him losing his ride. But that was a chance where Formula E could capitalize on Formula One's uncertainty. Formula One knows there's no manufacturers coming for a few years. Williams are selling up, most likely. And then we've got McLaren. Obviously, we've talked about their financial struggles. So IndyCar, which is quite stable and was able to get back racing quickly, has been able to kind of suck in the population, which is desperate for competitive racing. And until we get to Austria, a lot more people are tuning into IndyCar.
Yeah, I also think that everything is due to the structure of the IndyCar Championship being a US based championship. The fact that they don't have to do extensive traveling, excessive planning, juggling between quarantine measures makes their life much more easier. And therefore, the feasibility of the single races is much more high than Formula One. So I think that it was lucky enough to tackle the coronavirus emergency due to the fact that they are US based.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, a lot of things lucked into it for them. Geographical location, how many things they have to think about. The fact that their country obviously knows about IndyCar, but Formula One has had a bit more, shall we say, resistance when it comes to them trying to put their case
Yes.
for why they could be racing. And so, yeah, the stars are certainly aligning for IndyCar. But segue there, the stars have not aligned for McLaren, who are going to be unable to test ride one of their previous cars due to the engine package they had with, of course, Honda and Renault. So Sainz and Norris have had to go back to the old days of karting and Formula 3. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Euro Formula, karting, Formula 3. That was a nice throwback for both drivers who actually had to rely on their former experiences in order to get some on-track action because obviously they are going to feel rusty. Yet they could not afford staying, at home and just training at the gym. So that was necessary for them to try and get some outings. Also because simulator racing is not enough when it comes to preparing fully for a season, especially after such a long time off. So I think that it was nice for them to go back to their old days just because it makes them think about how they started and why they started. So that's a way to get some new motivation in.
Yeah, it's funny how you say about them doing the training. I was listening to the F1 Nation podcast and they interviewed Checo Perez. And Perez was saying, oh, yes, I'm going to soon be getting back to training. And Tom Clarkson and Alex Jakes commented on how nearly all the other drivers have been continuing this rigorous training process in the so-called off-season, whereas Perez has enjoyed lovely family time and is starting to get back into the routine. And I thought that was very interesting.
I mean, that was something that happened in tennis as well. I remember it was Roger Federer who said that he was unsure whether it would last long or if he would be back in action shortly. So he just gave up on training for a while because he knew that it was going to be a long process with this emergency. So he undertook the Checo Perez approach. So he just gave up on training completely and devoted himself to family time, to home time, on other activities. So I think that it was very interesting to see the difference of approaches undertaken by different athletes, not just drivers or riders, because some underestimated the COVID-19 emergency, so they just kept on training flat out during the whole time, whereas some others did like Checo or Federer.
Yeah, we talked before about Toto Wolff and how he's now the family man on all
Yeah.
the Instagram lives and all the chats. And when he's not having to deny that he's leaving Mercedes and when he's not having to put an end to all those rumors, he's saying how he's very much enjoyed the time with Susie and his child. And so, yeah, it's nice that this season that's about to explode of goodness me, 8 races in 10 weeks, which I still can't get my head around how it's going to work for everyone involved. But it's nice that they have got that family time.
Absolutely, because as we know, F1 personnel is always on tight schedules. They don't get to be at home quite often, and sometimes if they get a weekend off, for example, the last thing they want to do is get back on a plane and visit their families in another country. So they just have to relax at home, perhaps in their solitude, without their families around, because they, live away from their home. So it was very nice to see everyone going back to their roots during this quarantine time, which was very weird and unprecedented. And I just felt that everything was equalized, not just the media, but also drivers, team personnel. It was such a huge equalizer because everyone was at home spending time with their families. Everyone was spending isolation in their own original nest, as we could say.
Yeah, it's definitely been a well-earned break. But what I think Formula One desperately needs now is a little bit of transparency with the full calendar. Because I'm hearing possible things that when we've already started racing, we're then going to have races added to the calendar. And for me, that's very problematic because it's almost like the story of a child who keeps on playing their game with friends until they win. And then if they're losing, they decide, oh, yeah, we're going to keep on playing. We're going to keep on playing. It's like next goal wins in football. So I need to know properly the clear calendar, how many races before we start racing. I think that's the only fair way because already we think it's going to favor Verstappen and Red Bull at the start. But then if suddenly we've got these, we'll talk about Mugello in a second, for example, teams need to plan strategy. And their cars are designed for certain tracks. And if certain tracks are not on the calendar and others are, and then they decide to add them later on, it puts the validity of the championship in question for me.
No, absolutely. I do agree with you. But at the same time, I think about all the diverse sort of situation that every single country has. They have different measures. They have different situations. Some are ahead in terms of tackling the emergency in the correct way. So it would be very, very difficult to see at this stage who is going to be sure that in November, for example, they are going to be in the right conditions to dispute a race and host one, even behind closed doors or with fans. So I just think that it's too early to see a full calendar as much as I want to have as many dates as possible. So that's a huge dilemma, but I do understand both your point of view and Liberty's point of view as well.
I mean, it's nice to see Super Formula are obviously releasing their full calendar for Japan, and they're going into December. And Suzuka is there with a double header. So Suzuka's effectively thrown his hat in the ring and said, "Look, we're still here. If they can figure out anything with quarantine and borders and arrival, but Suzuka is a very real prospect for Formula One racing." But again, they need to know sooner rather than later. It's only fair on the mechanics, the teams, the marshals, the whole spinning plate that is the F1 circuit. I don't want it
Yeah.
to be October and then add a race in October saying, oh, look, we're going to squeeze one in before Abu Dhabi. Surprise. I don't want that.
No, I don't think that it will be this much unexpected. But at the same time, I think that that's the advantage of a single country based championships. Super Formula is Japan. MotoGP as well is mostly Spanish based because despite the fact that they are going to have a few races in Italy, they're going to have one in Brno as well. So they are going to travel across Europe in order to, avoid some of the quarantine measures in other countries. But still, they are going to make it a Spanish-based competition this year. So it's going to be a very, very distorted kind of season. Formula One does not want to do that. So that's the kind of issues they have to face undoubtedly until the end of 2020, which will in a way, upset the whole concept of a planned season. But if that's the strategy, then they are going to face the challenges they wanted to take.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Formula E and we talked about IndyCar, and obviously NASCAR will be in that discussion as well. But I think Super Formula, because exactly that point that it is a one country based championship, and it's got Tatiana Calderon, who's raising her profile monthly from what she's doing on Instagram and Twitter. Super Formula is definitely going to get a lot of eyes on it. And so if Formula One wants to be the pinnacle of motorsport, it is time to kind of justify that title, because it's got so many championships nipping at its heels. And as we know, Christian Horner said it was going to be a very big year for Formula One in 2020.
It is actually, well, it is in a way, as we mentioned in our previous lives, it's going to be a very big year for Formula One as a challenge, because as the pinnacle of motorsport, as you said, they are going to work extra hard in order to ensure the maximum amount of races. They were still targeting from 15 to 18 races, which is extremely ambitious and bold. And I think that as the pinnacle of motorsport, they are trying to get as many exemptions as they can, just like they are trying to do with Silverstone, and in fact, they are going to succeed. And as for the US Grand Prix, for example, they're going to try as much as they can, Bahrain as well, the United Arab Emirates, as we are expecting to see it as the season finale. So I think that it will be a very intense month for them in order to try and get as many exemptions as they can.
Yeah, I mean, social media is very good for finding some cynics and finding scaremongering, but there are a few question marks creeping in about Silverstone because of the level in Britain at the moment, the rate of transmission with COVID-19. And they're saying if it goes above the 1 as the R number, I say it like I know what I'm talking about, I really don't. If it goes above the 1 as the R transmission, then they're saying that even then, they're probably going to find the exemption is going to be very problematic. So, yes, Silverstone, 2 races confirmed, but we need those to roll around quickly, because with talk of a second wave and an increase, and of course what's going on in society at the moment with the protests, which is certainly not a fine example of social distancing, we need to race at Silverstone definitely sooner rather than later.
No, yeah, I do agree, because, you know, the scare of a second wave is getting bigger in every country, not just the UK, but also in Italy. We are really concerned about it, especially with the beginning of autumn. So we really need to get a proper strategy over the summer in order to contain the whole infections before September begins, because obviously that's going to be a very critical time in terms of the spread of the virus, also with the R index of the infection, which has to be lower than 1. We have heard it quite a few times here in Italy. You know, our Prime Minister has been very vocal about it over April and May. Actually, he's been talking about it very, very extensively in his public addresses to the country. So, you know, it's been very, very challenging also with all the scientific team in order to figure out what is going to happen travel-wise also for Italy, because, you know, we are being very conservative in terms of closing the borders, of accepting foreigners into our country.
Yeah, I mean, we'll only ever be positive. They only find positivity on Motorlat. We see the calendar of the 8 races being as it's planned, and more races to come. But of course, we are drawing to a close of the virtual races, and George Russell picked up yet another victory on his wonderful performance of Baku. Not quite as dominant as Monaco, which was a 40 plus second lead. But George Russell is certainly saying it's raised his profile wonderfully, the work in the virtual Grand Prix.
Yeah, he was still in control, not as dominant as the previous one, but still he was in control. And that was an amazing display. Also because you could see the confidence seeping through his Instagram posts and Twitter posts as well. You could see a big smile on his face. You could see that he was genuinely confident about what he's been doing during quarantine. And as we mentioned previously, it's all about visibility. It's all about building your image through this virtual Grand Prix in order to prove something to his bosses. You know, Toto Wolff has talked about the priorities for Mercedes. He's obviously going to talk contract-wise to Lewis, Valtteri and George first, because obviously those are Mercedes drivers and they're going to be priority. So the fact that George is so prominent and he wants to be taken into account is very telling of his hunger compared to the other drivers who are, you know, pretty much his age. They are already in a top team and he still has something to prove and to get. So he desperately wants it.
Yeah, very much so. In this lovely technological age of us doing our Instagram Live, I'm now going to have my Carlos Sainz moment, which he had with Lando Norris when he was walking around with his phone trying to get a good position, because I'm on my backup phone, which is why I was so late to the chat, and I'm just going to get it charged in. So if you want to talk to our viewers about why you feel that George Russell is most likely to take the seat at Mercedes ahead of Sebastian Vettel, over to you, B.
Well, actually, I think that we have seen pretty much what happened during the 2019 season. So we have seen Sebastian Vettel just losing over Charles Leclerc. In the meantime, it's very nice to see your ceiling, David. I know that you are charging your phone, but it's very nice to talk to the ceiling as well. I had never experienced that before. But still, we know that Carlos Sainz has this hunger we have been talking about. As for George Russell, it's just the youthful spirit of young racers, and teams are changing this approach. They are starting to see who wants it more and who has a lot more to prove and to get. So I just think that Ferrari has seen what he can do as for Sainz and what Vettel has yet to accomplish, which is obviously not much left.
Yeah, it's quite incredible when you talk about the ages, and Checo Perez at just 30 years old is saying that he's an old man, and it's just hard to get your head around what's going on with the sport. So, yeah, I mean, George Russell has been very vocal, saying that in his victories in the virtual world, he got more publicity than all of what he achieved with Williams last year. And so you can't help but feel that he may be having his head swayed from people talking about Vettel. And so this is doing his personality and his brand the world of good. But I think unfairly, Charles Leclerc is being criticized for his performance in recent virtual Grand Prix. There was a comment in the live broadcast where people said he's thinking that he can just turn up and race. And I think it's more what Max Verstappen said, which is when you're racing in different games, you've got a different feel for it. We know that Charles is racing on iRacing, he's racing on R Factor, he's racing on all those kind of things. So he's kind of lost his groove, which he was in for Formula One 2019. And that's kind of proven Max Verstappen's point, in my opinion.
No, I do agree with you because, you know, different softwares, different kind of games can take a toll on drivers as well because, you know, different styles, different approaches. It's all about the structure of the game, of the way it feels. So it's fair to recognize and acknowledge that different games have, you know, different response within the drivers. So, you know, if a driver is talented, he also needs to get his practice in. And that's what he does on the track. That's what he does on other softwares. Perhaps some are more suitable to his own driving style. So that's what can happen. So I just think that it's very poor to shame a driver if he gets some criticism just because he's not very extremely used to a certain game. Because in the end, that's just an initiative that we do to make up for races. It's not that competitive. Again, you know, it's up to the meaning it gets for the single driver, as we saw with George Russell. For him, it's extremely important for his image. Leclerc, on the contrary, is prioritizing different things. He does it for fun mainly. He does it to remain and stay busy and focus as well. So, you know, it's just about the priorities. He races with so many different games. Perhaps F1 2019 is not his cup of tea, and we can't do really much about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I've been lucky enough to speak to Charles a couple of times, and I always get the impression he's always thinking about the team. He's never thinking about himself, he's thinking about the team. And so when you've got the fact that the virtual Le Mans is coming up this weekend, and he's part of a team, it doesn't surprise me at all that his Twitch feed is dominated with Le Mans virtual practice. He is putting the team ahead of his own personal needs. And I think it's yet another of his glowing qualities, which is why people think he'll be a multiple world champion and his popularity will just continue to increase. but it is very unfair that you can't have an off day without getting criticism. And again, it justifies Max Verstappen going nowhere near the game because with Team Red Line, which he races with Lando Norris, and obviously he's in Le Mans at the weekend, he's been doing, of course, the Porsche supercars as well. He knows his R factor, he knows his iRacing, and he said deliberately he did not want to put his toe in with Formula One 2019. But of course, the poster boy for Formula One 2020 has become George Russell, tweeting today how the handling is so much better and making those sales come to Codemasters. That was very interesting to see.
Yeah, obviously it was a very, very big boost for Codemasters, this sort of virtual championship, because, you know, not only is it beneficial for the drivers and for the championship, but also game-wise for the industry and the whole gaming industry. Obviously, again, as I said, it's about what it means for the single driver to race. We saw that George Russell is extremely enthusiastic about it, so he's going to be the perfect face to sell the product, unlike Charles Leclerc, who, as you mentioned, is the perfect team player. And then we have Max Verstappen, who does not want to do bad because he knows that criticism can be very harsh at times and even unjustified. So we had three different approaches which can all work team-wise. But again, we saw the importance of social media. We saw the importance of building your image and using a platform correctly. And that's what George Russell is doing at the moment, which is extremely impressive, both for Mercedes and Williams as well.
And of course, Lewis Hamilton's been using his platform to encourage everyone to do the right thing with Black Lives Matter and the social movement there. And of course, tomorrow he returns to the car at Silverstone with Valtteri Bottas having had a run out today while they start shifting back into race mode. And even though it was a 2-year-old car, it was lovely to just see and hear a car racing on track again. Well, not racing, but at least on track.
At least running, yeah, definitely. Hearing the engine roaring was so refreshing for us, and I can't just imagine how refreshing it was for the drivers as well to get back behind the wheel and just get rolling again after so many months of stoppage. You know, it was so disheartening to turn up to Australia and not be able to race a single lap. So I think that it was the best moment in their racing careers, just because it was such a long time coming and such a long time missing on-track action as well. I don't know how it's going to be perceived in the long term, but definitely it's going to be a great moment for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lovely drone footage of Kevin Magnussen doing some laps in a go-kart and just seeing his incredible speed. And then, of course, we had Lando Norris in the Formula 3. But then finally, we're back seeing Formula 1 vehicles in action. And of course, there's the discussion, as we said briefly at the start of our conversation, for the 1000th Grand Prix for Ferrari, Mugello. Talk about stars aligning. That would just be incredible.
Absolutely, it would be massive just because it would be right after Monza. So having a double header in Italy in two different locations, which are going to be so special because, you know, Monza is iconic, but then Mugello, which was, you know, written off from Dorna, from the calendar. It was supposed to be in early June. So last week it was supposed to be the Italian Grand Prix of MotoGP, but no Mugello is going to be on the list for this year. Instead, there is this concrete possibility of having it in Formula One. And as much as I think that it's a solely bike track, which is suitable for bikes only, it's amazing to see that Ferrari and Formula One are in talks to hold a race there, because it's going to be special for the anniversary of Ferrari, who obviously has hosted the Ferrari Finali Mondiali previously there. So that's a Ferrari event, which is, you know, extremely important for the market and for the mark as well. And in case this becomes reality, it's going to be enormous for the sport. So again, talking about Christian Horner's words, it's going to be a big year.
I mean, that's the thing. There's also been quiet whisperings of the potential double header in Shanghai. And if we did end up having 2 races in Shanghai, China, and 2 races in Italy, 2 of the countries we know who were so devastatingly affected by COVID-19, if there was ever a kind of signal of resurgence and human spirit, it could be really, really beneficial to the countries. So yeah, we'll see what dates continue to be added. Very exciting.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Actually, as the pandemic started spreading and taking a toll all over Italy, I read a tweet from a Sky journalist, Antonio Boselli, who actually said, ironically, as things stand at the moment, it was, mid-March, he said, China is the only place that could safely host a Grand Prix at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's out in Jiading, which is a good hour and a half from the heart of Shanghai. And the teams always stay in the hotels around there, so there's no busy city populace like you would have with Canada and Australia. So as a location and geographical setting, it's perfect. It's easy to maintain the paddock. It's easy to put the biosphere on, which they want to, because there's the kind of moat, which is running around the track for a start, which has the beautiful water going all the way around the outside of the grounds, and it's definitely isolated enough. So Japan could still be announced, China could be announced, Singapore, we're quite sure that's gone. They said it has to be September 20th. They said it has to be with fans. That looks ever less likely by the day. We all know that Abu Dhabi, with all their money they've thrown into it, are definitely, most likely, definitely getting the last race of the season. So the 15 races becomes very realistic probability, and so does racing on three continents, which is what we all want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And in case this double header becomes reality, we could also have the possibility of racing in Sochi twice. Once is confirmed, obviously. I read many different comments about that because some, hate the track, some love it. I do love the venue. I don't really like the track pretty much.
I like the venue too. Why do you like the venue?
Well, actually, I have a thing for Russia, being a Russian language student, I've always dreamed of going there. I realized my dream last year as I went there, and I like the venue because it's a very modern facility, very easy to reach. The treatment with the fans is absolutely brilliant. I saw everyone happy with the venue, and I think that even the setting of the in the region of Krasnodar is amazing. So it's very underrated as a location.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's underrated as a track as well. We know the torpedo comments which came from racing in Sochi, and it's given us some lovely moments.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised when there was so much vocal hate, for want of another word, when people were like, two races at Sochi. Oh no, I can't think of anything worse. I can't think of anything worse.
Yeah,
But what that
perhaps
does
the
show the
the confusion that creates that turn one, turn two combination does have everybody surprised every time. But I do relish the mayhem sometimes.
Yeah, completely. But I think it also is a good sign that a sense of normality is returning. Because 3 months ago or 4 months ago, when everyone who was a Formula One fan was like, I'll take any racing, I'll take a Formula practice on a Friday, I'll take this, I'll take that. And now suddenly it's like a kid in the sweet shop again. They're being told, well, this might be a possibility. They're like,
And
oh, no, I
no,
don't want
we
that. I
don't
don't
want
want
it.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone started hating on Sochi once again. And that's because, quarantine has been lifted, the lockdown has been lifted as well. So normality is going slowly, is coming back all over the world, not just in Europe, because we see that obviously, even though the US are one of the worst hit countries, they still have normality coming back in certain regions and states. So it's very pleasant to see as well, even though, such a vast country obviously has to deal with peaks in different parts of the country.
Yeah, what's also really pleasant to see is the news that Daniel Ricciardo says that the lockdowns probably added a couple of years onto his Formula One tenure because he admits that he was getting a bit weighed down by the rigmarole of playing track, playing track, playing track. And now he's kind of like, oh, I've got that buzz, I've got that feeling back, and it's given him a few more years of a career. So with McLaren being the place he's heading and the budget cap looking like it's going to favor teams like Racing Point, McLaren, Williams, things like that kind of setup. Who knows? 3 or 4 years time, Danny Ricciardo, world champion. I would not be surprised.
Interesting scenario, actually. I would need, for example, 1 year to agree with you, perhaps. I still want to explore how things evolve, but still, I'm not surprised to see that careers are becoming longer for drivers, also because fundamentally 2020 has been a lost year. So people are eager to race more. Also, I read a comment from Lando Norris saying he was surprised to see this much drivers market action during the lockdown, because obviously no racing, no on-track evidence in order to start negotiations, which were basically based on last year and based on nothing as for this year. So it was rather surprising for me to see so many negotiations drawing to a close at such an early stage.
Yeah. Toto Wolff said similar. He was like, I'm not one to judge, but I was very surprised that there were so many early decisions. Because I mean, I wrote on it previously as well. When we look back at the testing most recently, Ricardo was right up there. The Renault was performing really well, and all signs pointed to they were maximizing what they could get from the car, and it was going to be a very strong 2020 season. Then he's not done any further running. He was really happy at that time, but Zach Brown and the McLaren kind of tempting has just been too much to resist, and who knows what could be next. But I mean, the budget cap is obviously going to continue coming down in the next few years. The MTC is a very well organized setup. It knows what it's doing. There's a lot of people who think that Claire Williams getting some ownership, maybe Porsche being interested in joining Williams. I've heard that mentioned, that they say that setup of the budget cap is going to benefit those kind of teams. And you can understand that. So if you're Mercedes, which has 1,000 people, who you've got the people in Brackley, the people in the van out the back, the people on the grid walk, on the pit wall, and you're going to start losing those crucial elements from your effectively race victories, it's going to have an impact. Whereas if you're a team that's never had that worry, you're going to grow and become stronger.
Yeah, I was thinking about the statement of Cyril Abiteboul concerning Renault staying in the sport, talking about the budget cap. As much as this tendency of, new manufacturers not being enticed into the sport, I think that the budget cap being lowered year by year is going to obviously have a benefit not only on the teams that are already present, but also it's going to perhaps attract some new manufacturers, as we were talking about Porsche, for example. So it's very interesting to see how things develop in the next few years, because we're probably going to have a few surprise marks coming into the sport, which I'm all about it, because it doesn't have to be an elitary sport, as much as it's the pinnacle of motorsport. I'm very, very delighted to see when a newcomer is around.
And then everyone's desperate, of course, for Carlin to make the step up and come and join the big boys, as it were. Big boys and girls. Claire Williams, big boys and girls. And as well as that, you've got Bernie Ecclestone announcing that the glory days of the big money contracts are most likely coming to an end, because we know that they want to put driver salary into the budget cap in the next few years. Lots of people have been making that argument. And so if that's the brave new world that we're faced with, then the 50 million euros, which Lewis Hamilton is hoping for, well, will soon become a thing of the past. And so does that open the door to more pay drivers? Does that open the door to more talent coming through? I think it's going to be very interesting if they start attaching the salaries to the budget cap.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to revolutionize the whole concept of Formula One as we know it right now, because obviously that's going to be cost cutting, even as for talent, because Ferrari has already undertaken this sort of approach that they want to reduce driver salaries. They chose Carlos Sainz because he had a good value for money. So instead of Vettel, instead of meeting the demands of a four-time champion, they decided to go all in with Leclerc, which is obviously part of a former member of the Ferrari Driver Academy. So his salary was kind of balancing between the program and the Formula One program. So it was rather cheap for them. It was very convenient financially. And then you have Carlos Sainz, who's not making so many demands, because obviously in his tally, he's got just one podium. So that's very interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, for young talent coming through, if you start looking again at the 2019 Formula One season, And there was bad luck for Carlos Sainz, yes, but there was so much bad luck for Lando Norris. Everyone says Carlos Sainz finished comfortably ahead of him in the championship table. And of course, we know Perez did that crucial overtake in Abu Dhabi, which was able to get him 10th place in the table. But Lando Norris at the start of the season just was way ahead of Carlos Sainz. Then once we got to Shanghai, he obviously had the collision, which was no fault of his own. And then Carlos just kind of had a bit more belief and he pushed himself forward. If Charles Leclerc starts with being on top at Ferrari in Sainz's season, the way he responds is going to be crucial because he says he's not signed a number 2 contract. But if he is faced with resilience from his teammates of being right at the top, I'm looking forward to how he responds, definitely.
Yeah.
2021 will be good.
Absolutely. We do agree with Christian Horner's remark as we keep quoting him because, you know, that is going to be iconic in a way or another.
Yeah, at least it gives Netflix something to write about because a very successful podcast, of course, WTF1 is celebrating 10 years, and just before I came on air, it was trending with Michael Schumacher and Jenson Button because they were asking fans to comment on first driver they supported, first race that they saw, and all that kind of stuff. And lots of the comments were people talking about 2019, 2018, because they were converts from the Netflix series of Drive to Survive. So it's really nice to see that most of the time they're welcomed into the Formula One community, but we know it can sometimes be a clique, which I don't like when people are like, oh, you're not allowed to come because of Netflix. My passion for Formula One comes from my father getting me into Formula One. I did not follow it myself. Someone directed me to Formula One. Now, in today, the modern world, the way that people are being directed to Formula One is Netflix Drive to Survive. And they shouldn't be alienated or made to feel worse because of it. So I hope that comes to an end soon.
Well, I do agree with you. I mean, I was watching races with my dad since I was little, so I do share your kind of backstory behind Formula One because that's how I got into the sport. Eventually, I became passionate about it, and then it was an escalation. Social media played a huge part in the way I kind of evolved personally and professionally. So I would be in the middle between your generation and this millennial generation of people who are drawn into Formula One thanks to documentaries and social media only. But still, I do think that new fans deserve the respect as much as people who have been following Formula One for such a long time, because in the end, they fall in love with the sport, they fall in love with its unique features, and it doesn't matter how. It matters the quality of your passion and your excitement for the sport.
Yeah, it all comes to what you bring to the sport. Because in the UK, I live near the very famous area of Castle Combe, and Castle Combe has a very famous racetrack. But the problem is that people move into Castle Combe, which is well established as having a racing circuit, and then once they've bought their house, they complain because of the noise from the racing circuit. So as long as the people who are coming into Formula One don't try to come into it with, oh yes, I like it, but I want you to change this. And they've got to kind of realize that we all have a part to play in the sport, but we have to also appreciate it. And I think the best way is summed up by Toto Wolff saying it doesn't need gimmicks. It doesn't need gimmicks like the reverse grid for qualifying. No one at all liked the whole 50 points on the Abu Dhabi several years back from Bernie Ecclestone's inception idea. And we all know the mess that they've had over the years for qualifying when it was a shootout or the slowest goes first or the fastest goes first, and they just didn't have a clue what they were doing with qualifying. At the moment, this seems to work at the moment. So people have to realize not everything is perfect, but the rule makers will respond. But you can't just come into a sport and come into an ideology and start putting your stamp down and say, okay, now change this and change this and change this and change this. Because that's why IndyCar exists. IndyCar is all the cars are the same. So don't come to Formula One and try to make it IndyCar.
Yeah, you know, it's all about shifting targets over the years. So people don't really realize that trends do change, and Formula One is trying to follow it and trying to embrace social media culture in order to draw as many new fans as possible into the sport. And I do think that that's the approach everyone should take, taking advantage of the potential of social media in order to meet the needs of the audience as well, because a successful product has to listen to the customers as well. And that's what
Yeah.
Formula One with Liberty is trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's respecting the past, obviously 70 years of Formula One, but it's also looking ahead to the future. I mean, I remember playing with little cars on the floor while Formula One was on the television, but the first race I remember properly is lucky enough to be 1992, Monaco, and the epicness that was Senna and Mansell. For yourself, what's the first race you remember vividly so well from the
I
past?
do remember San Marino 2005 because that was a huge shift for me. You know, I've told you before in one of our calls, way before our Motorlat news roundup, because you know I was a Ferrari supporter mostly because of my dad, who actually had influenced me with Ferrari, with its obviously amazing culture, which is, you know, Italian spirit, Italian racing, Michael Schumacher's myth and icon. But then I realized that there is more. There are characters in racing, and that is how I got into respecting Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, we all. I should have been able to guess that. I was like, oh, it's going to mention Alonso. Of course, it'll mention Alonso,
Of course.
and that's there's something special about the history and all the moments, and that's why, as I've said many times before, an era of racing shouldn't try to be compared with another, because as long as we appreciate it for what we have and what is there, because we know V10, V6, V8 engines coming and going and revolutionizing turbos and all that stuff that's happened. The racing is how we've got it at the moment. And it's the personalities, it's the drivers. Every time they go in the car, they're putting their life on the line. When someone proposed the idea that the second race should be for no championship points, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I just couldn't understand it at all. It's like you're putting yourself in harm's way for nothing. You're basically just doing it for entertainment. And that's not fair. That's not what it's about.
I
And
know.
so, for while these wonderful pilots and these legendary racers are navigating the track, as we've seen with Vettel, maybe this year being his last, people have just got to start embracing what we have and enjoying it. Everyone likes to be a critic, but then they're also the first people to say they missed something when it's gone. Case in point, Jenson Button. In the last few years of his racing, people were criticizing Jenson Button, and then he left Formula One, and they were all like, oh no, come back, come back. Ridiculous.
I know. I think this whole pandemic thing is going to be revolutionizing a lot of the misconceptions that people have on Formula One. So they will finally start appreciating more what we have. They will start caring about the characters a bit more. I really hope everyone will exit this very trying time in a better way, personally, and also in terms of sportsmanship.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to start racing. We're at less than 30 days now. As I've said
Yes.
to you many times before, I'm expecting record viewing figures for free practice
FP1.
one.
Yes.
We can finally see what these cars can do. Checo Perez is speaking with a lot of confidence that he's got a car that will challenge for podiums. Let's not forget, Lance Stroll already has a podium as well. So there's been a lot of chat about actually, when you look at the record books and the titles he won, the history of racing he has, he could actually silence a few critics. And then, of course, we've got the characters that are Haas and Roman Grosjean with his counseling and battling his demons, if you like, was racing better than ever last year when, you know, he didn't crash with his teammate. And we're all looking forward to seeing these much loved personalities back in action. So it's an exciting time to be an F1 fan. And the word
Absolutely.
fan does mean fanatic, and I think some of the fans could be a little less fanatical, but it certainly is a good time to watch the sport.
Definitely. So that's all we got for today. It was absolutely marvelous to chat to you once again. I'm looking forward to our next chat next week. I really hope every single one of you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. And I will speak to you next Tuesday, David. It's been a pleasure.
Looking forward to it. You saw my ceiling today. Maybe you'll see a front door next week. Cheerio.
Bye. Bye, David. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Bye bye.